you want to do.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to CollabTalk, the show. This is Dan Holmes, CEO and co-founder of IT Unity. We have just actually lost one of our guest stars, Christian Buckley. He's re-entering the room right now. And as he gets up and running, I'd like to give a special thanks to Christian, Marc, Ben, and Naomi for all of their work on this show. And here they are to bring to you episode 4. Christian, now that you're back, take it away.
Well, thanks. Sorry about that. It's just as the theme music comes to an end, of course, this is live, and so, of course, my connection goes dead, and I get kicked out of the platform. But thanks, and welcome to another episode of CollabTalk. As you hopefully you've been able to join these things. And what is CollabTalk? What's the point? It really is just 4 talking heads doing kind of a deep dive, and we just lost one of our what happened? She'll be back. I know she'll be back. But 4 talking heads kind of sharing our opinions about the news of the day around Office 365. We're all SharePoint folks here, so we can talk SharePoint and related technologies. But we've got 4 topics that we're going to cover, and we'll just let the panel introduce themselves very quickly. I'm Christian Buckley. I'm the Managing Director of Americas for GT Consult based in Bellevue, Washington. And Naomi, you're back.
I am. Sorry about that. Just as we get all excited and happy, then the application decided to crash. Never mind. I am Naomi Moneypenny. I am the Chief Technology Officer at ManyWorlds, based out of Houston, Texas. And if you hear some big thunderstorm in the background today, I apologize for that because we're about to have some nice stormy weather here. Marc?
I'm Marc Anderson. I'm Chief Cook and Bottle Washer at Simpraxis Consulting in Boston, Massachusetts, in the giant U.S. of A. Glad to be here. Benjamin.
Hi, everyone. My name is Benjamin Niaulin. I guess I'm French. Thank you for staying. No, I work at ShareGate. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. This is always fun. Obviously, we have the agenda, you'll see, but we tend to go off topic. But it's all in the good spirit of Office 365 and SharePoint and on-premises, and we'll see.
And being French. And apparently, we'll just throw that in there too. So, anybody else want to be
I always notice that SharePoint MVPs end up on the bottom of the list, and Office 365 MVPs end up at the top. Is that the way the world works now?
We've been told by Microsoft that we must stack it this way. So it's official, very legalistic letter that came in that we.
Actually, just to correct. To correct that, Marc, you're actually the only SharePoint MVP now because I switched to Office 365 MVP April 1st.
Woo! Oh, that's right. We got to update the slide. Dang it, there's extra work that you're just racking up for me there, Ben. All right, well, we'll just jump in. And, of course, we are just sponsored this month by our companies. Of course, future episodes, if you have any interest in sponsoring an episode or even a topic on an episode, then just contact IT Unity, and they'll be happy to have that discussion with you. What we're going to cover today, and this is just kind of our mix of topics. Of course, there's a few other things that have kind of popped up in the news that we'll try and discuss. We're going to talk about Ignite, this event that some people might be aware of that's happening next week. We're going to talk about end user adoption, and is it even still something we need to talk about? I don't know. We're going to talk about it today. Could be the end of the topic today. We're going to get into the new cloud storage options. The news is I think a little bit close to a month old now, but what that means and why it's important and what's happening at Microsoft around that. And then we're going to talk about branding, and specifically branding for the cloud, because that is a hot topic that comes up again and again and again. All right. So is everybody ready for Ignite?
Yes.
I haven't.
So excited.
All right. There we go. Yeah, that's topic. Okay.
Oh, does everybody have all the party invitations? That's the most important thing, right? So it's like, it's not all the content and all the stuff that we've been sweating for weeks and weeks and weeks. It's actually all the parties and all the other crazy connections that are going on too. So, and I wanted to mention actually a couple of things. On the Yammer network, on the Office 365 network, there's a few other little events that are going on. You may have seen that there's an Office 365 network breakfast that's going to happen on Tuesday morning, I think it is. So that might be a good thing to be involved in if you're on that Yammer network. And we're also having, for the sort of enterprise social community management, sort of more innovation sort of talk, we're having an unconference on Thursday morning. Bright and early at 7:30, between 7:30 and 9 a.m., and we're having that just very close to the convention center. So a bunch of folks who are interested in working out loud in responsive organizations, just thinking about unconference topics, we're all going to get together. So that's Thursday morning. So find us on the Yammer network if you want to have some more information on that.
Of course, you're bringing up Thursday morning, trying to pull people away from my 2 sessions on Thursday. So thank you very much.
They're all looking for some way out.
That's right.
Yeah.
We're all during the
So just to hop on to Ignite, of course, we're all very excited for Ignite. There's lots of anticipated topics, so I would say that definitely go into the sessions, look at them. If you haven't registered yet, the problem for me is I have, for every slot, I have like 5 sessions I want to go to, so it's definitely going to be a big challenge. Try to see, there's going to be a lot of announcements for Office 365, of course. SharePoint 2016, which, we've got another announcement that came out by Bill a couple of weeks ago, and that was brought to spring. So, Christian, that is calendar year. I'm just kidding. And so spring 2016, and of course, we're anticipating to see some of these, or hear some of these announcements I don't know why I'm looking at the screen. I should be looking at the camera. So we're definitely anticipating quite a bit. So, the best value to get ready to Ignite, best value, find the people, find the speakers, find the Microsoft people, and go ask you questions, and come and have a SharePoint. I think Bill is organizing a big SharePoint. Come and join us for sure. Mark, what else can they do to get prepared?
Well, I saw a great quote from Laura Rogers on a promo thingy somewhere, and she said, there's going to be great content, great parties, great all that stuff, but it's really about meeting people, and that's really, in the long run, why I actually go. We can always watch the recordings later or read what happened from lots of bloggers and stuff, but just spending time in the hallways and talking to the people who we know from the SharePoint and Office 365 communities is going to be awesome. Of course, we'll have a few thousand other people there who we may or may not know from sort of the exchange and link, and I've lost track of how many different worlds will be there. So, it should be a real extravaganza. It is going to be very hard to figure out what content to go and see. I know that IT Unity's got a bunch of stuff going on there, so I'll give a little plug for that. There's, I think, either a booth or a table or something, there. IT Unity will be there. We have there's an expert's guide to Ignite on the IT Unity site, so of course we want to check that out because we all can learn how to do these conferences better if we do a little bit of homework up front.
Yeah, and if you go to if you go to the itunity.com and whack Ignite, and you'll find a bunch of expert guidance on various sessions. So if you're there and are interested, like I did one around the social topics. It's not all of the social topics. I kind of went through and picked the ones which are more focused on, not on adoption and kind of more of the end user, business user, people that are trying to learn about the details of doing. It's more about the roadmap and structure to be aware of where social is going. But there are other guides that are available up on the IT Unity site, as well as the live blog that's going to be happening. So I think I think all of us are planning on doing live blogging during the event. Is that correct? Pressure time, peer pressure. Of course, we're all going to do it, right? Yes, nodding.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. But that's a great resource. The one other thing, I know that we've all heard this said over and over again, but even if you're not participating in Ignite there in Chicago, you can still watch the keynotes live, stream that off of the ignite.microsoft.com site, as well as every session will be recorded. The audio will be recorded along with the slides. So you will be able to, I think within 24 hours, Microsoft is going to make that available, so you'll be able to get access to all the content. So I know Ben, just like I have the same thing, multiple sessions stacked up. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to go to all of them, but I'm even now tracking to make sure that I'm keeping track of the sessions that I want to go and get the content, post-event and be aware of.
Yeah, that's the great thing. There's a lot of choice going on at Ignite, and part of the tension is even when you're doing your own sessions, right? There are other things going on that you want to go see. It's like I can't do it because I can't see all of them. But I think that's going to be great. It'll be out on channel9.msdn.com to be able to get all that content. And so I usually spend a lot of time, actually, a few weeks after the conferences. I did it for a SharePoint conference too, and I'm sure people are familiar with that. But basically, just have it sit there in the background when you're at work, right, and try to listen to as much content as you can, because there's always something, like in the sessions, even the sessions you don't think are of interest, oftentimes there's something there, and you just, it's good to be able to sort of get that holistic view, which is what Ignite is really all about. So when are your sessions then, Christian? Why don't you tell us that?
Well, thank you, Naomi, for asking that. I'm doing, in the expo hall, there's 20-minute sessions that are going on throughout the week. And I've been invited to do one on actually my SharePoint topic last year, talking about online, on-prem, and everything in between. I'll be doing that Wednesday afternoon. I think it's like at 2 or 2:30 p.m. It's in this schedule, but it's on my calendar. I'm then also doing a session at 9 a.m. on Thursday, which is about the evolving role of the IT pro, which is interesting. I've got about 1,000 people have signed up for it for a room that holds like 550. So I think it's going to be a standing room only topic. And then directly following that, I'm on a panel with Mr. Dan Holm and Chris McNulty, Laura Rogers, Jennifer Mason, and myself. I think that's the panel, talking about the same topic as Wednesday, which is online, on-prem, and everything in between, kind of what the transition is like to move to the cloud.
It's funny, you didn't invite the three of us to be on that panel. I don't really...
Which, that panel, that was Microsoft that invited me, Mark. That's how that works. Yeah, sorry.
Just kidding.
I threw in your name, and apparently that was the other legal letter that I received, the cease and desist, stop asking. So,
Stop asking, Anderson. We really don't want him. That's okay. I'm not hurt. Ben and I are going to hang around. Ben and I saw a couple of the presentations at SharePoint Evolutions last week that various people will be doing at Ignite. So we got a little bit of a preview, and there's some really excellent content that we know about because we saw some of it. And, of course, it will be in bigger rooms with lots more tech around it, so it'll be even cooler. So, some of the announcements that will happen at Build this week, there will be lots more information coming out at Ignite as well. So, the big 2 weeks, really.
That's right. Very exciting stuff. So, quick plug for my sessions. It's Wednesday at 5 o'clock. I have a session there. We'll be doing Yammer IT myth-busting, so it's going to be a really awesome session with Chad Slipka. And then on Thursday afternoon, I am presenting with Eric Overfield, and we are doing the social intranet and how to basically integrate Yammer and SharePoint. So cool stuff there. But yes, enough about Ignite. Maybe we should move on to our next topic.
One last thing, though, is we do have a poll. Sorry, I should have brought this up a bit earlier. But just to try and, if you see it now in the console for Adobe, just trying to get some tracking of whether people are planning to attend or not, it'd be great, and we'll look at that. See, the numbers just are filling up already. But are you planning to participate? To what level are you going to participate? And so it looks like right now we've got 61% of the people here on the. Oh, just dropped down. Look at that. Wow, we just. people that are going to be watching the recorded sessions just jumped up to 30%. But we see that we'll kind of track this for another few minutes, but we're going to jump to the next topic. Seeing how
just to add on, I think the attendee party was I forget, Fallout Boy. I think that's a band that's known. So that's definitely going to be there. And they had announced a special DJ, mystery DJ. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah.
Ben, maybe he's French. You know I'm going to be doing that the entire hour, Ben, right?
There are a bunch of jokes that we could do with that, but I'm not going to touch it.
I know. I just bring it up here. All right, so let's talk about adoption. Is it still a problem for organizations? Anybody want to take the first step of this? Marc.
I call this a Paul Comsey question. You'll understand what I mean by that, Christian. It's the wrong question to me. So of course I'm throwing water right on top of this topic right off the bat. So the problem isn't about adoption. It's about are these platforms actually giving people more capability to do their jobs better? And adoption is the outcome that comes from them being able to do that. So we talk a lot about adoption. What we really want to talk about, I think, is are we seeing people being more successful in their jobs? We measure that by looking at adoption. So the real question for many organizations is, what do they want to measure? What do they think adoption is? How do they understand whether adoption is something that they actually think matters versus accomplishing more work and results better? One of the things that I think a lot of organizations talk about is they've got bad adoption or they got good adoption, but they don't really know what they mean. So understanding those metrics before you go in is very, very important. And it's clearly based on sort of the standard definition of adoption, an issue or a topic or a concern for many organizations, and they're definitely paying a lot of attention to it. I know that you've all seen things in the field. Who wants to jump in with some examples or thoughts about this?
Sure, I can go ahead. So I'm thinking, from an adoption standpoint, it's an interesting thing we've seen from Microsoft in terms of the evolution of a metric, right, for having adoption and seeing what the adoption is. And we know that a lot of the services around that are really garnered toward adoption as a metric. But as you said, it's about that business value and how people are driving the productivity dollars that they're looking for. How are they accomplishing their tasks faster? Are they getting work done in places they weren't able to do before? I'm thinking about that more generally. So I think we're in for an interesting ride, right? Because adoption is one of those things inside of a technology organization. You can try to put some hard metrics on it. But inside of an organization where people are really basing around their customers and their services, it becomes a different way of working. So the idea is really thinking about a business process, looking at that business process and the value that it's delivering, and then how do I get the technologies and the tools that I need to support that. But if we were to think about that more generally, we'd say, okay, here's the next level. We'd say, how do I couple what this collaboration is doing to the actual value in the process? And so if I think about adoption, does it really matter whether it's a tool or a specific technology? It's about how am I driving the value at that key information points that I need in that business process. And maybe there's some new tools, maybe there's some new technologies that I can actually use to enable the information that I need for my business process. So thinking it's a higher level topic. We seem to focus on adoption because it's something that we can measure. But really what matters is actually the quality and the quantity and the type of information that we're getting into that business process and making sure that that's actually in place.
It's interesting, the conversation I was just having yesterday with Melinda over there. So there's Melinda right there. Yep. We were actually talking on this topic of, I think it kind of bridges between what Naomi, what you said, and what Marc said. So there's one of having the telemetry and tools and going in and pulling down data about what's happening on the system, and then the other side of this, like making sure that you're asking the right questions. And I was sharing with Melinda yesterday in a conversation about how a manager was going in and looking at the data of activity within SharePoint and making a judgment, was wanting to shut down certain sites because of a lack of activity. where if you had just a 30-second conversation with those teams, you'd know that it's a project that doesn't follow a continuous cycle. It has kind of starts and stops, but it's essential that that site remains ongoing, because people will come back to it as that project picks back up and that customer picks back up. And so it's not, you have to be careful at looking at the analytics and understanding what is the business trying to accomplish here, what is the purpose of that site, not just looking at, hey, no one's accessed this site in 45 days. Well, there might be a reason for that. So it's just making sure that you're having the conversations and not living and breathing by a spreadsheet of analytics and making your decisions about those sites and that content and those teams.
I think Huey has a good.
Ben, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sorry.
Well, I just wanted to say yes. I mean, all of these things we've been saying, and it's come up in different talks. Right? We've asked different questions in the past, and often we go back to, well, you got to go look at the business process. What are you trying to solve, and then see if it fits. And adoption is the result of that work, right? That if people want to use it, has it been helpful? And if I want to tie it back a little bit into what we've been seeing, right? So if we're talking, bringing this back a little bit to Office 365 or SharePoint on-premises, whatever version we're going to see next, I think it's very interesting, and I'm actually happy to see these changes happen. Of course, there's still some work to be done here and there, as always, but I'm happy to see, and I know that we say it with a smirk a little bit, Office 365 experiences, where you just go in, but I find it helps a lot because of more and more customers that I talk to. I look at, news, and I keep seeing the same thing as people bypassing the CIO or IT and just getting these services because it helps them get what they need done. And if we can provide something like that, things that they consume right away easily, that will result in a better adoption. And of course, there's many factors into this. It has to solve the problem. But the question is it still a problem for most organizations? Just that question alone I'm going to go with Marc and what he said earlier. Of course, it's definitely it's always going to be a problem. It always depends on, are you solving something? What do you say, Marc?
Did you just say it depends?
I wasn't going to, but I will if you want. I think Christian, you and somebody in the audience here, Huey, have a good point. It's about understanding what those people out there really need, and when we think we've solved a problem, we have to understand that problem will continue to move. So we need to understand that adoption is a continuous process, not a single event. We don't just get everyone to start using this thing and then think our job is done. We have to continually update and expand and revise and add new capabilities based on what people are trying to accomplish. Office 365's new experiences may be one way to help pull people in to re-adopt. It may be something that will drag people in who've decided that the platform doesn't really do what they want by seeing, oh, there's an interesting new thing I can look at. The flip side of that is maybe it's too much change. So we have to find out what each organization is all about. What does adoption mean in that organization? What are those? How are we getting to the strategy, as Naomi was saying, and look at this in a holistic way. But we can't ever stop with the adoption thoughts or the are we being successful thoughts. That's an ongoing. It doesn't stop after a launch. I think we should stop thinking about launches altogether these days. It's an evolutionary thing. It's something that we need to always be focusing on and paying a lot of attention to.
The question is, I think, really from a technology part of it, technology is really that enabler. We say that all the time, right? What I'd like to do is not to have to measure the use of the technology. I would like to be able to measure the effect it has on the business process, right? And I think that's where we need to go to. If we're thinking about how we help knowledge workers, if we automate some of their tasks, we think about, what we're doing in terms of getting the information that we need and getting it at the speedy and timely quality that we need it at. We're thinking about how technology enables us to do that. And if the technology part is broken, then yeah, we're going to see the metric reflect that. But if we don't tie it to that business process, if we don't understand what makes the business tick and have those metrics, then we're always going to have this struggle between IT as the separate thing in the organization versus the actual enabler for getting information done, right? There is nothing in a company anymore that does not require technology in some way, right? And so it's like figuring out how can I tie these things together so that I can understand the actual adoption and why it's important to even have this technology as an enabler as part of the business process. So I'm always going to push for that stuff because I think it's where where we should be, right? It's the Wayne Gretzky thing of skate to where the puck should be, and it's always thinking about where it is that we tie these things together, how we tie the business process and what we actually really do in a real company versus what we do with our technology platforms that have that enablement there. This is my 2 cents.
I think my camera just froze. I don't know if you guys can see me. I'm just gonna before I refresh.
Hear you.
I was just gonna make one comment really quickly. The difference between adoption and engagement. And most of the customers that we talk to, it's not about adoption. And if I talked with a customer about a year ago that was talking about tracking the number of people who logged in a given month, I said, you know, that's not a very healthy metric to say that people have adopted SharePoint. Level of engagement of what they're actually doing within the platform, how long they log in, they're actually on the platform, and are they doing those business activities on the platform, that is a better measurement. So again, it comes back to the conversations and making sure, like any metric, are we measuring the right things? Learning from the measurements that you have, creating baselines, but then going and refining those things as you learn about what do we need to track and what are people actually doing on the platform. With that,
unfortunately, most metrics tend to drive exactly the behavior that they measure, right? So if it's how many people log in at 9 o'clock in the morning, the IT folks will push a policy that says everybody's browser opens to that page, therefore they're successful. That's my cynicism showing through, but it happens a lot. I always try to take more of a balanced scorecard approach to this. What's going to drive the strategy of the organization, and how can we trickle that down into how we implement this technology and what we measure? If what we're measuring is something like clicks, then that's all we're going to get. If we measure something like, well, how many extra dollars of revenue we've generated because of this platform being in place, then that's what we're going to get. So be careful what you measure, because you may actually get what you measure and not intend to get that. Benjamin's stroking his beard, so I'm sure he has something deep to say.
No, I was listening to your talk, and at the same time, I was reading one of the comments by Matt. They're very, very interesting. So, no, this is really good. I think it's important to discuss these things and put them out there, because I hear the same thing you guys. Oh, we're going to put SharePoint, we've got the licenses, or, we're looking to do collaboration. That was always a funny one. And so it's good that we put it out there, but definitely a lot more to cover. I don't want to take up all of the time on on adoption. I know we have many topics. Christian.
Well, let's jump to the next topic. Talking about the new cloud storage options for Office 365, and there's some news that came out not quite a month ago about support for a number of different tools. And actually, I'd like to just kick things off with the poll, and then we'll start to talk on the topic. If we want to we've got a poll of the cloud storage options which you're currently using, and it's select as many as you are actively using, and we'll just start to talk to this. So it's this idea that Office 365 becomes interoperable with all of these different tools. Are you laughing?
Who did the poll?
The last option makes me want to uncheck everything else.
oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, like that. The none of them for religious reasons. Yeah.
I think what's exciting though is
you want to put them there for us.
No, it's funny that I can laugh at this joke that I forgot I put that in there, so I can also enjoy the humor.
It's been a long week. Oh, funny. I like it. Pre-prepared jokes, surprise yourself. It's a very Mr. Bean thing, isn't it, to do that? But anyway, all right. So I was going to say, just from a, I think the exciting part of it, from the mobile first, cloud first, right, that we hear a lot from Microsoft, thinking about that strategy and really thinking about the kind of gentler, softer Microsoft in some ways that wants to play with others. And I think we're really seeing some of the evidence of that. We're seeing that in a lot of the other applications that people are working on. But we're also seeing it now, things like storage. Even though that would be a business that's really part of Microsoft, we can see that, they have a mission that the companies have a lot of different things and different areas that they're already using. So I think, from an Office application standpoint, the Dropbox integration now, the ability to access, to edit, and share inside of Dropbox, and do that from your Office applications is crazy that you can even do that, right? I mean, it's just embrace and extend that methodology. Even inside of fruit-flavored devices, so which many on our panel have. So if you have an iPad, if you have an iPhone, you're able to use this as a location now. You can bring up the different locations now inside of your applications. And you'll also be looking for the Office integration. There we go, fruit-flavored devices. You'll also be able to use your Office Online integration basically for doing viewing and editing. So you'll be able to use PowerPoint Online, you do Word Online, and you'll be able to make those inline edits, which it's one of my absolute favorite functions, I have to say. Whoever the online team is on the Office 365 team, they do an awesome, awesome job. I think that stuff is amazing, and the more and more we come to it. And then the other options that they're sort of rolling out, we've got Box, we've got Citrix, I think. So, there's a number of storage providers. They actually have a partner program that's coming together. So if you're a storage company, you'll actually start to be able to partner with Microsoft and be able to bring some of those things to market too. And so, yes, and then even more, even on a Windows 10 device and coming to Office for Android also, being modeled beautifully by Christian. So you'll be able to use the Office Online applications and storage locations wherever you want. And so the idea is, we're really looking at the person, right? We're looking at all the information that they need to consume across all these different platforms and being able to consume that wherever we want. Not trying to lock you into some specific vendor or some specific technology, but really pushing things the way that you want. And so, if you can do things from Box, from Citrix, from Salesforce, right, I mean, you just want all of that information coming to you at the right time and the ability to open, edit documents from there. Fantastic stuff. So I know you guys have some thoughts about it. Benjamin, what do you think about our cloud first, mobile first, and all the storage options?
Yeah. I think it's brilliant. I put it up there in the chat. It was a great move by Microsoft in multiple reasons. Mark looks like he's agreeing, or not. We'll see. But no, I think honestly it's a really good move. Microsoft had lost a lot of, how could I say this in English, but kind of a lot out of breath in the past years, right? We kept seeing these things that, and then all of a sudden they're back on top in every way. And I think this was a really good move because as the industry changes and we talk about always people in the business subscribing to solutions and just picking out things all over the internet to just being able to work and often bypassing IT as well, I think that if they can at least leave that Office, the Word, Excel, PowerPoint everywhere all the time, and it is a benefit for Dropbox and Box and all of these others, but I think the real winner at the end is going to be Microsoft to make sure people stay in that ecosystem. Because as announced already, I think I saw Jeremy Take show at the Evolutions conference last week during his keynote. He showed off new apps in, I think it was Word or was it Outlook? In any case, doesn't matter. There's Office apps being added also in the devices. So you stay on your iPad, you open up Word, and then there'll be apps. And that's definitely where Microsoft has always been winning in the past, is having developers build solutions, build add-ons, and keeping all of these in Office so that whether you're storing, well, basically making the storage just another thing. It doesn't matter. You could use Dropbox, you could use this, you could use that. However, you want to make sure you're using the Office suite because we have all the apps, and you have even more advantage after with OneDrive for this. And and I think it's a great move for them. It's great for customers that. Just last week, somebody was debating whether they were going to go with OneDrive for Business or Dropbox, I think, with an existing solution. And, it was okay for them to choose Dropbox because they still had Office and everything they could do, and for their business needs, I think a company of 4 or 5, it was perfect. So very, very excited. I think they did a really good thing by doing that. Marc, you're a developer. What do you think on that perspective, maybe?
I'm a developer now? Awesome. Cool. Actually, I think the person who's going to win in all of this is me, or you, right? I mean, it's not about whether Microsoft wins or not. It's about whether we can get our jobs done better. And I have a great example from last week at the Evolutions conference. I was working, I'd done my presentation. I noticed I had a spelling mistake in a slide on PowerPoint. I was sitting in a session. I opened that PowerPoint presentation up on my Fruit phone. I fixed the spelling mistake. It saved back to OneDrive Personal, because I've been trusting that a little bit more over time. But OneDrive for Business is also awesome right now. It's much better. I'm sorry, that's not what I was trying to talk about. But anyway, so OneDrive Personal, I clicked Save on that, and I saved it into Dropbox, where we were depositing all of our slides, all on my phone in a session. So I got a bunch of things done all in one little session, not knowing that I could do all of that stuff in less than 2 or 3 minutes. I didn't even realize that I could save to Dropbox. I just clicked on that button that said share, and I thought, well, maybe it's there. I don't know. So, we're seeing this stuff getting so simple that even a moron like me can handle it. So obviously it's working. And it was totally painless. It is simple. My Dropbox was full, so I had to handle that. But, I pulled up the tutorial, Christian. So, but it was really cool. I was really impressed. I even tweeted about it.
I think.
But what I think.
Ben, I mean, the comment that you made, that Microsoft is finally coming around. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I mean, all of the platform providers, this has been an issue for a long time. Where I think the reality has been, or it has become, that there is no single customer. There's not, I doubt, a single Microsoft customer out there that is 100% only Microsoft technology. The reality is that our end users, our employees, our teams, we're spread across various technologies because we need things that work. And if there's a gap within the Microsoft stack, we'll go right out and find them to fill that need. And what I do think Microsoft is changed on is they're recognizing that they need to go to where people are working rather than trying to force fit every customer into every Microsoft product. Ideally, they'd love everyone to be 100% on the stack. It's just not the reality. And so that's how I see this, a lot of it opening up. There's a great question, though, by Matt talking about governance across these different pieces. And I'll be interested to hear whether Microsoft talks about that. Certainly the partner ecosystem is already lining up to solve that issue. You do have in Office 365 the expansion slowly of kind of the management API capability, so that we're starting to get some insights into what's happening in Office 365. And some of the partners out there are also looking into these other third-party storage devices as well, so that while it might be rudimentary, some of the governance controls that you can do, there are out there in existence like a console view into, and some of them purely cloud, that allow you to go in and look at this employee. Here's their OneDrive, here's their SharePoint, here's their Dropbox, here's their Google Drive, and be aware of and start to help manage what is happening with their employees through those other external storage systems.
Mm-hmm. I think it comes down. Sorry. Oh. We always do that. I hate that. MDM story is what I was going to say. So, because I think it comes down to the mobile data management piece of it. It's not just Office 365 in this case, right? It's really thinking about all of the storage that I have available to me in the cloud and the devices that I'm using. So I think broadening the story from just Office 365 to understanding where you're going to use Intune, you know, maybe even using System Center for some things in terms of where you're managing storage on an infrastructure level, but also the ability to do the MDM type of applications so that you could wipe the device, you know, of the corporate data, or at least have a recognition of what data is available there. I do think from a content management standpoint, what's really interesting is to look at where we're going to go with the digital rights area, right? So trying to automate that stuff as much as possible so that the machine is able to help you recognize when something is confidential, should it be able to be copied, you know, should you be able to move it, all that kind of stuff. And trying to have some machine help with that, really, in terms of managing that content and how it can spread. I know in the MDM solutions that we've seen already from Microsoft that you're able to actually stop people from copying, right? You can't even copy and paste text out of a document to go post it, for example, on Facebook, right? The copy-paste function just doesn't even function in that area. And then there are obviously third parties, you know, you've got that you can work with to also sort of compartmentalize the storage on there too. So I think as a overall, it's kind of really looking at the MDM storage story as well as what you're doing with the digital rights inside of your organization. And historically, I think people haven't invested very much in DLP, but we're going to see a lot more of that just because it is getting harder and harder to manage. So go ahead.
I think it's always interesting. We answer these questions. I'm going to give it back to you, Ben. We always answer these questions with the technology answer. You know, it's how are we going to lock people out or to lock people in or prevent people from doing, and it's always a tech answer where we've all had access to content that we shouldn't have shared for decades. Well, I remember the time before computers. Yes, I'm that guy. And so, you know, we always were able to take things that we weren't supposed to and move it out of the organization. So, yes, we will. There is a vision, and it will be all of the things you guys have talked about. But I think the other side of it is to have very open and frank and clear policies about what people should and shouldn't do within the organization, the softer side of this, because the hard side will never solve all of the problems. So I'm hoping that organizations get a little bit smarter about talking about this stuff as opposed to just coming up with all kinds of cool acronyms that are going to lock people out of everything. So Ben, I'm sure you have something more interesting than that to say.
No, absolutely not more interesting. I was just going back to earlier when I was talking about developers' perspective. What I meant, because we were talking about, these storage options, they're not new. These are all storage options that we've always had. What's been announced is really the ability to work with Office, Word, Excel, and using these locations, and whether you're on your device to save to them or to open them. And what I thought was, from the developers or vendors' perspective, there's a really great value there to be able to make a solution once, right, and reach not only your Office 365 customers, but being able to reach people that are on Dropbox, right? Because your app may be to do something inside of Word to I don't know, anything, copy a certain thing and translate it or post it, or whatever the case. I think there's a real benefit on that perspective. And then touching back on the devices, of course, I mean, there's a story there. We don't know it for sure right away. I'm guessing something around Intune and all these compliance things that they're coming out with, Compliance Center that may or may not do something. But it's always going to be, I think, difficult with technology. And as Marc just said, definitely something around communication, training. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to be able to show that there's better value to use what you have at work than what you have somewhere else. And if that becomes better, then of course I'm going to use that instead. But anyways, that's a whole other topic. That's all I wanted to say about the developer story.
That's really cool.
That is it. Any other final thoughts before we jump to the next topic?
I think you know. Go for it.
Oh,
Sorry, go for it. Let's. I think we're having some lag on. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
But anyway, yeah, I just made a point on the mistakes So Mark and I are chatting there in the chat box. I think it's fun to do that. You know, from the mistakes versus maliciousness, and you can't plug all the holes. It's totally there, right? I mean, you cannot do that. So we can do user education, but I think it's part of it is making sure that we're making that experience very easy for people, right? So with this ubiquitousness of storage options, then comes the idea of, as a company, which ones of these things am I truly promoting as part of a workflow? And if I can try to help control the device and compartmentalize the storage on it so that I can actually use it in an effective way. But then the other half of that is really thinking about, you know, do I want to allow people to do storage in a different way with their personal content, or is it something that I already have as a problem inside of my organization? And so figuring it out, like if you already have people who've found a million ways around what you've already given them because of lots of restrictions or anything else, then it's really a very different strategy you would take to governance and how you're going to try to rein some of that content in and make it easy for people to help you with that, versus I try to do the thou shalt kind of method, which, you know, doesn't always work depending on the type of company that you are. So it's figuring out that governance strategy for the different paths of where your company is right now and how much proliferation of content there is versus how much you can actually mandate or give guidance on and try to, you know, realistically expect that to happen inside of your company. So just 2 cents on that.
And I think that's a great point, Naomi, because you know, that's you know, it's funny, you know, part of the success of SharePoint has always been that it was about centralizing the document storage, getting rid of the file shares. And essentially what's been happening around the proliferation of these cloud storage devices is we've been creating these other silos. So, I mean, we're moving in that direction. And I think this is having the ability to interact with those cloud storage platforms is the first step. Having some capability to provide some visibility into that for those things that are not personal, that are owned by the business or that are under that. You know, but that's just the logical next step. It needs to be there. Because I mean, I hear from a lot of customers that are scared that they hear of these new capabilities coming out, and there's not yet the governance, compliance, security answers in place. And it doesn't mean that that Microsoft's not thought it out. It doesn't mean that the partner community is not thinking about those things. I mean, my feedback to Microsoft would be to, when you're making announcements around those things, it's almost like, you know, ground it in some of the realities of that management layer. I think that needs to be part of the announcements, that, and here's how it fits in with all of the other reasons why we're using Office 365 and SharePoint in the first place, because of the security, compliance, I mean, all of those other things, in addition to the flexible collaboration that it enables.
Mm-hmm.
As Office 365 becomes almost, hey, 1 second, almost more of a consumer product. So they're not just aiming that at IT departments anymore, right? So smaller companies, somebody's just going to decide. It's going to be a lot like the Yammer adoption idea. So we'll see that people actually want things to work in ways that are not enterprise, big air quotes around enterprise, right? So we need to be able to, you know, one size fits all of this. Some of it will be soft locks, some of it will be hard locks, and we need to understand how all of that works together. Now I'm done.
All right, let's jump to our final topic here. Does branding really matter for the cloud?
Oh, big topic, right? Branding. I actually, there's this, I forget who had told this to me, and I went to a session at some point, and somebody in a branding session a couple of years back, and during session said something that stuck is, the prettiest picture wins the funding. And you could have a super amazing looking intranet, and you can have one that has more features, and chances are the one that looks a lot better and seems easier to use is the one that's gonna be used. But essentially, I think it's still very important to be able to brand, but the story in the cloud or Office 365 is certainly very, very different, and we have to understand that before we get into it, that some things are possible and some things simply will not be. If we're looking at things like, let's take the portals, right? We have the video portal at the moment. We can consider maybe Power BI as being a portal, and of course they've mentioned some of the new portals coming out. There isn't going to be a lot of branding available on these, right? And the way that they're going to in Office 365, it was mentioned earlier, talking about almost, Marc was saying it's almost for consumers, and in some ways, it kind of is, but I would argue that it's not for a consumer. What we want is to be able to consume solutions. And where we're looking at that, we're looking at just picking it up and start using it quickly, maybe put some colors, make sure our branding, our logo is on there. But the idea is to be able to use it, and so everyone can use it quickly and easily. So for those of you, does it still matter? Absolutely. Branding always matters in a company. But you'll have to know what's available and what's not available in Office 365 before you get into it, because you may see some surprise. I think even the general guideline is don't brand using master page modifications or whatnot, because you're on Office 365, so updates are going to be rolling out. And if they decide to change the master page one day, which they did in the past, when they changed the ribbon for a document library, the menu at top, I should say, not the ribbon. If you had made modifications, you absolutely lose them. So I think we're looking more into the style of composed looks from the past, something like this kind of theming. We'll see how it actually all is going to be in next week at Ignite. I believe there's some branding sessions as well. So be sure to attend that, because I think it still matters, but again, we'll have to be aware of what's possible and when it's possible. Naomi, what do you think about branding in Office 365 or the cloud in general?
Sure. So I think it's interesting, right? There's been a lot of talk with the Yammer networks, for example. Before, Yammer used to have this the masthead functionality, so you could actually customize the brand. So you put your little home logo in there. And then one of the adoption techniques, talking about adoption from earlier, one of the adoption techniques to drive awareness of a specific campaign in Yammer was to change out the masthead. So you change out this graphic to say, please, fill out your profile picture or whatever it is. And it was actually a strategy that I used to recommend a lot. And now with the rollout with single sign-on or simplified sign-on with Office 365, the ability to customize that masthead has gone away. So now instead you're customizing the Office 365 ribbon. And the ribbon can be, 15 kilobytes, right? It's not exactly a lot of content in there. So you can put your logo, you put some colors, maybe you can put something about a campaign if you can compress the graphic down enough. But the idea is really more and more of that real estate is going to the experience, right, and not to the branding. And I think it's an interesting transition to understand what's going on between the world of portals and how we consume the information, where the branding was really, really important. We wanted to give people a very specific look and feel on there, versus now we're moving towards the experience is the branding somehow, and that the portal idea is going away, and that was just like it's a functionality piece, so we don't really care about having our look and feel as much. It's just a question of, can I get the task done? So I think there's a balance between what we see from a consumption perspective of how we treat people, employees, basically as consumers inside of our organization, consumers of information inside of the company, versus what we're doing from a collaboration standpoint, where we just want the interface to get out of the way and get on with the work. So I think I think the world of branding is evolving because of that tension. It's no longer about the web look and feel versus I'm trying to get stuff done. So Marc, do you have some thoughts on this?
Oh, absolutely, I do. First and foremost, these applications are websites, and so historically we've branded websites, and that alone is an attitude that we have to understand. When someone says, "Oh, no, it's SharePoint," that's not the way people see it. They see it as a website, and they want to brand websites. The other thing I think that is very important to think about here is how seriously Microsoft has in the past taken the concept of branding. It's been a pain in the tuchus to brand anything around SharePoint. I've done it for a living for years now, and it's not a trivial exercise. Yet at the same time, they give us themes that say things like that are called things like Sea Monster, that nobody in their right mind would ever use. That green one, whatever it's called, Benjamin, you probably remember. They're awful. I mean, they're like the world's worst example of what you would ever make a site look like. So if they gave us some really good examples, or not examples, really good options around branding, where we could just switch to something that was a little bit more like our organization, and not have to go through that pain in the tuchus stuff, I think a lot of this discussion would go away. There's not, it's not just this, I'm going to do it, we have to do this once everything, right? So it's not just full-size branding where we change every font and color and image and everything everywhere in our sites and do nothing. There's a lot in the middle. And the themes just don't quite do it. They haven't done it in the previous 3 versions of SharePoint. There's been a theming engine that keeps changing and is never useful enough to really take seriously. So I don't think people are going to stop wanting to brand SharePoint or Office 365. That's going to continue. What we need to think about is what are the right mechanisms and what are the right variations to represent the 80%, the 80-20 rule that we really need to bring into play to make people not just happy but actually more productive. That branding actually makes adoption, which we were just talking about earlier, a possibility. And if we ignore that, then of course we end up with lots of licenses and not a lot of usage.
And I think that ties into, again, how businesses use the platform. I mean, SharePoint from the day one was this, Swiss Army knife. It could be whatever you needed it to be. And for many organizations, the branding activity was going and personalizing that. So SharePoint went away. Most people, didn't know it was SharePoint. It was built out to meet that business's needs. Employees, partners, customers would log in, would have that business interaction, and it was a forum. There was workflow. They were collaborating. They were uploading or downloading content from it, and SharePoint as a brand was irrelevant. I don't necessarily have an issue with Office 365 with moving away from some of those branding options. I mean, certainly we work with our customers around that. There's a lot of very creative things that you can do to make it look and function the way that you need it to look and function. But we do have that hard conversation with customers that we move on to 365 that have this expectation that they can make it look exactly like all of their other systems, and it can't, not anymore. But we also don't have to do as much to manage to make sure that they don't break something by doing all of that branding. And so I think it's a trade-off. And honestly, I fall on the side of functional over form if they're able to do more business. But I do agree. I'm sorry, this sounds now here at the end like very much like I'm punting the topic of let's wait and see what happens and where it evolves and goes.
But I think it's very, very. Sorry.
Go ahead, Beth.
All right. No, I just think a lot of the times, and myself included, it's we always say on premises versus the cloud, and it's one or the other. And I mean, SharePoint 2016, from what we know, is all we talk about is it's going to enable hybrid, connecting the two, and there's no reason to have Office 365 to be able to consume things that we need to quickly, that we depend on Microsoft to provide these so that it doesn't change. Well, Marc is going to argue that it changes often, and I agree, but it's to be able to use these, use the video portal, use the X portal, use the Y portal, use the About Me, and then if you need to do a heavily branded intranet, then maybe have that on premises. The user doesn't care where you have that service, whether they click on a link and they're on premises and then they go. If it's as a company, you have that need to have a heavily customized and branded intranet, perhaps it would be ideal for that scenario to have it the intranet on premises and then have the rest that you want to consume in terms of storage, in terms of groups or OneDrive for businesses in Office 365. Of course, at the moment, that story isn't perfect because we don't have something like SharePoint 2016 that promises to bring that experience almost seamless to the user, and we'll have to wait and see. But my guess is that in the future, we look at Office 365 to consume experiences and provide that branding, that theming, the color, the logo, and then we'll look to the on-premises to do the customization. And I consider a heavily branded intranet or whatever else we need in that case. Perhaps that would be one of the solutions. Well, I know Marc is about to jump on on that topic.
I think, unfortunately, we're out of time. Yeah, but I know that
True.
there's a lot. Just everybody hold. All good? All right? All right. I don't know if there's any other news in our last minute that we have here. Anything else that is late-breaking news that anybody wants to kind of mention that they're thinking about, talking about? Or are we all just hunkered down, getting ready for Ignite next week, and that's all we're thinking about?
I think that's all we should be thinking about. So we see all the Ignite announcements next week. So it'll be itunity.com/ignite, and making sure that you keep up with the live blogging and the expert guides that will be there. So really good stuff, and we're looking forward to some exciting topics to talk about on our next month's chat.
Yeah, definitely.
I just wanted to bring up.
Oh, go ahead, Mark.
I think it was last month we talked about the new About Me and profile page stuff. Wasn't that last month? I think so. Those pages have all started rolling out, so people actually should be seeing that stuff. That shows how fast. We were talking about rumors, I think, last month when we were talking when we covered that, and now we're already seeing it in a lot of tenants.
Right. They had announced, but then had not provided the detail, and then we came up upon our session here, but. Please let's keep the conversation going. Of course, you can always reach us through the hashtag CollabTalk. Definitely through the IT Unity site. We have our. You just go to itunity.com/go/CollabTalk, and you'll get to all the latest episodes and register for the ongoing series. And with that, of course, all of our contact information. If you see us at Ignite next week, please come say hello. Don't be rude and just walk by. Come say hello. But with that, thanks a lot, everybody, for tuning in. And I think we have yes, we do. Our next one will be May 26th. So definitely check that out. And until then, thanks a lot.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.